I don't know the term. What a surprise.
I'm looking. It's very important.
It should not come as a shock to Michelle that I don't know a Star Trek reference.
It's not distortion. I don't know.
No, it's
the alpha tuning, what?
like when they do this, I think it's when they do this dematerialization.
Yeah.
They have like this.
We are not enough geek.
So Captain Kirk used to say, Scotty, beam me up. But there was another term. Beam me up.
That one I actually know. Right. It's 9:30. I think we can make a start. Okay. Welcome to the new season of Neuroccino in 2022. The rules of the game is everyone is welcome to present a piece of science. That could be a paper, a book chapter, an entire book they thought was interesting. You join us live on Zoom and pitch the exciting piece of science that you found and tell us why you think it's exciting. And today we have Victor, who is a PhD student with us in Bordeaux and has left us for the last 3-4 months to go to Canada, and now he's back and kindly volunteered to do Neuroccino. Before I give you the floor, Victor, just a quick announcement. Obviously, we're super excited to be back with Neuroccino for this year, but we also started a collaboration with the Organization of Human Brain Mapping, OHBM, and we'll be starting to cross-post content from each channel. And I already started with Niels Müller's interviews with outstanding people from our community. And the next thing that will go up online is the Neuroscience podcast from Peter Bandettini coming next week. So keep an eye out on that, and also subscribe to the OHBM channel, please. That's all the updates I have for you this morning. Victor, take it away.
Thank you, Steph. So the paper that I'm going to present you today is, well, it caught my attention because it's called Face Detection in Untrained Deep Neural Network. And so when I saw this title, I was like, okay, so it's perfect for me. It's both neuroscience and deep neural networks, AI stuff. And it's not that I'm a specialist in it at all, but it's something that really caught my attention and I really like it. So I wanted to know what it was about. And so I dig in. And so the article, so can you all see the paper correctly? Okay, thank you, perfect. So what the paper is about is that it starts with the observation that when it comes to face detection, something that is very studied in primates, we have two different scenarios that kind of conflict each other as to the emergence of face detection in the brain development phase. Basically, there is one school that says, okay, we learn to recognize face when we see faces. Basically, we train our brain to recognize faces, as some research show that if you take young primates and you deprive them of faces during their childhood, they will have trouble later on recognizing faces, if I understood correctly. But in the other hand, you have also research that say that people starting blind do develop the region of the brain that is specialized in face recognition, and they do have activation there when in face-related contexts. So there is something that is innate here, and those two conflicting paradigm, it's need to be resolved, but it's really hard to test. You can't really well, you can do some tests with primate monkeys, but when you want to really go deeper, it would probably be easier with human, but you can't really do any deep invasive stuff with human. So what what usually turn to in this case are models, and here they wanted to do to use the power of deep neural network, so AI, to model this. And I think it's a really good analogy that we have here, because well, first they use a model, a deep neural network that was originally designed to more or less correspond to the ventral visual stream in the brain. So it's analogous to what we have in the brain, but obviously it's not the same. But it's supposed to mimic it at least in an architectural point of view. And it's something that we can test and check if the scenarios that we envision are at least plausible. So I think it's a really interesting approach, even if it doesn't hold all the answers. So back to the actual article and what they found. So first thing, the main part of the paper is to analyze what happens when you try to detect faces in a completely untrained neural network. Basically, they say, okay, here is our analogous brain network, which is so a deep neural network. It is untrained, like it would be in a young child, a newborn, and can it detect face spontaneously? And as a matter of fact, kind of. So this, what they did is they took their untrained network and they input different images, and some were faces, and they selected what they call the units, which will be usually called if I understand correctly, the neurons in the deep neural network. But because we are both working with the brain and the deep neural network, they call it units so that we don't confound them. So they selected the units in the deep neural network that were responding to faces spontaneously with a completely random starting point. So basically, what that shows here, so here is the response the response of a unit of or units that are seems to specifically respond to faces. So you can see that it has a strong response for faces and almost nothing for other type of images. So great. So at first, you've got an untrained network, and purely by chance, a good number of the units inside of it they do respond to faces. So this was their first result, and they showed that the unit that respond to faces are usually more in the last layers of the convolutional neural network, because on the first ones, basically what they say is that you need a hierarchical hierarchical organization which will reduce the data and process the data in some way before you can get any kind of actual measure, which is to me quite coherent with well, it seems normal. But even with untrained network, it does show that it kind of work. So I think I speak a lot, and I'm not showing you that much. So the thing that they did afterward were trying to see what exactly the network was detecting. So this part I didn't really understand. It's different methods of extracting how what the networks is extracting from the the image, and I guess it's some kind of retro projection of the activation on the last layer and recreating an image based on the activation at the neuronal level. They use two methods: the reverse correlation method and the X-dream method, which are different methods. They are the same goal. And for example, when they select the face-selective unit, so basically, as I said, just the units that randomly happen to detect faces, they show that we can get somewhat of a face-looking image. I mean, it's kind of nightmare fuel, but still, you can see that there is some kind of image resemblance here, which explain face resemblance here, which explain why it detects faces. And they did with the same with flower selective units and just random units, non-selective units, to show what it sees. And then what was it saying? So yeah, then try to see what happens when they do train the neural network after having identified the brain selective units. And like that would be the part where you have your child learning with the environment in front of it and looking at faces and other things. And they show that there's just several things, but first they show that if you have an environment that is deprived of faces, it will reduce the ability of the network to detect faces. So this actually goes in the same direction as the experiments that were done with primates with an environment deprived of faces in their infancy. And if you do, how to say that? If you train the network with images, but you don't actually say, okay, this is a face when there is a face in front of it, it will not also learn well that there are faces, but it will be better than a face-reduced network learning, but it won't be that good. But if you add faces and label faces as they are in the training data set, you'll have better results in face detection, which is expected. But also what you'll have is a reduced number of actual units that respond to faces. So you will have a pruning of the number of the of the units that respond to faces, basically only keeping the ones that are really responsive to them and improving them, and just pruning the others. Some kind of sharpening of the network. And then they try to see use these networks with a lot of different kind of images to try to disentangle why it was detecting faces and what could it be compared to. And so what they see is that here is different the different categories that they used, like a flower that is called, it's called Gazania, jack-o'-lanterns and other things like that. And they measured the number of responsive units in the network. So the number of units that by chance happen to detect this kind of image, and recognize kind of image. And so there was a lot of, well, the one that were the most easily detectable, like spontaneously detectable, were websites, jack-o'-lantern, iron, shaver, gazania, so the flower. We can see that faces are in the middle of the detection range. Basically, so they can be detected quite easily, but not as well as others. And then there are some that are really hard to detect spontaneously. And when they do a bit of analysis, they show that actually what you have here, the one that are the most easily detectable are the one that are the simplest, actually, the one that have the most easily recognizable shape and things like that, and which is understandable. The more complex the image, the harder it is to recognize, and the less likely you'll have a network that spontaneously detect them. And so this is basically their results. And they discuss a bit about different neural network and the relationship with the literature in this kind of thing that I'm not really comfortable with, because I'm not into this field. But then they also discuss about the actual meaning of it in terms of brain and neuroscience. And so what they completely acknowledge that it's not like a real neural network like you would have in the brain. There are several caveats here, but it does give you a plausible scenario for why the brain works as it does. And what they're saying is that, well, I don't think they are saying it exactly like this, but as I interpret it, is that their network does show correspondence to what we have in with experiments, where you have an innate part that can arise spontaneously just by random, that will allow you to recognize faces. And then when you actually confront your innate detection with the world, you will sharpen it and get better at it. And so it's kind of both. They do speak about the fact that in the brain, you have a specific region that is systematically found that is specific to face detection, which would not completely correspond to what they have here, because it's mostly spread on the whole network. So there are a lot of work still to do with regard to genetics and how it would generate the correct architecture for face detection and things like that. But I think it's a really interesting take on how this kind of thing can arise from just random initiation of a neural network with a specific architecture. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Well done. Any questions? 2 hands are up. Leah.
Okay. Yeah, there was Michelle first, but I go. And I was thinking if like faces were a previous hypothesis, so if the authors expected that faces were one of the images that can be recognized without training, or if they discovered that doing this experiment. And I was also thinking that like the faces explanation, why if it can be connected also like to brain development, so you are like naturally trained in a social environment to connect a face to a person. I was wondering about these two things.
All right. So first, yes, actually, it was really a question that they had, how faces are innately recognized by the brain, and as a proof of that, actually, the neural network that they use has been created in another research for face detection and to really simulate the ventral visual stream. So it's not completely random and say, oh, we've got this result and here it is in context of neuroscience. It's really something that they were trying to detect. And I didn't quite get the other question. I'm sorry. It was about.
No, it was more connecting to the explanation why it seems that it works like naturally for faces. I just was wondering about this social training, but it was just my wondering.
I mean, I think the beauty of it here is that it's not really specific to faces. They focus on faces, but it's not specific. It can be used for other things that have a simple geometric organization. So when it comes to the social learning of faces during when you're learning, when you're developing, I think it's just a specific case of sharpening the network, if you could consider their explanation to be correct. So I don't know. It's
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you had a question as well.
Yeah, so that's a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm very excited about this. I was wondering how, so I see the method is different, but is it better than the kind of machine learning algorithm we have to detect faces that are, for example, used with CCTV in United Kingdom? Do they discuss that a little bit? Or?
I don't think so. I think it's really not as good as at detecting faces as a properly trained neural network specifically designed to detect faces. Here, they wanted really to see what happens if you don't train it, actually. And so if you look at what it detects, it's stuff like that. It's not really, it won't be able to really detect all faces super well or anything. But it does, it can do it. Just
that's how you kind of this bottom-up learning and decomposition of images. But do you think, because you said it takes the example of faces, but they could have taken any other example. Do you think the same approach will work for places or body parts? Well, it's definitely due to the contrast, but you see how this bring it to another level, because body parts can be radically different but belong to the same thing. And there is an area in the brain specific to that.
Yeah, and the fact that for places, I think it's more complicated because you've got several things in places. You get the landscape, the location, where you think it is, and a lot of things, and the orientation and stuff. For body parts, it's a very interesting question because it relates to the fact that first, body parts are quite simple objects. So I assume that you'll have the same kind of spontaneous detection on an untrained network. But at the same time, you say that it's they have their own specific place in the brain, right? Yeah. So like faces. So what I expect is that there is so much that we don't know. This is what they ended up with saying, like, yeah, there is some probably genetic parts that we don't understand yet about why specific objects are in specific part of the brain. It's something that is still really obscure and hard to understand why. And I mean, hopefully we'll have the tools to analyze that in the future. But right now, I don't know.
It's I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing a little bit the discussion, but I was thinking it's maybe because the model is very hierarchical in only one direction.
Yeah.
But we do know somehow that the brain is not that strict in terms of hierarchy, and you get some convergence of information and integration that happen. That is not modeled here. So maybe future models, do you think, will be able to kind of like those networks that will model this kind of convergence or inter. Do you think it's possible? I'm not an expert. So I have no idea.
Neither am I. So I think it's a super interesting idea.
Let's do it, man. Let's do
it. But yeah, it's like, it's true that in the brain you have like back and forth stuff like that, and between different layers, and maybe state of the art neural networks they do that. I don't know, but it's a layer of complexity that you add. That yeah, it's hard to predict what will happen if you do that in a neural network. So yeah, sorry, I really can't really comment on that.
It's just open discussion.
No, it's cool.
Out of curiosity. It's called feedback feedforward. Technically.
I mean, when you do train your network, there is like a feedforward thing that when you put your data in, and like the backward propagation of the learning that is done there. So basically, I don't know if you're familiar with backward propagation, but yeah, so it's not the same as like giving the data in the two directions, but it maybe is more related to that. And you also have like all of the networks that like adversarial networks or things like that, where you'll have kind of training in both directions. Kind of, I'm not a specialist there, but yeah, I don't know.
It is so interesting.
Yeah,
I'd like to have the time to explore this a little further, but I'm afraid I have to choose.
Always. That's too bad. We need several lives at the same time in parallel to learn everything.
I know. So exciting. Thank you for this.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Not that I can see at the moment. Quick question for me is so what? So face recognition is innate. Why do we care?
I mean, that's the base of basic science. It's learning why things work they do. And the fact that we are studying the brain is something that we know almost nothing of when you think about it. We have to start somewhere. And I think it's wonderful to see people start everywhere and to try different paths toward the same goal of understanding the brain. Because we are in a state where we don't know where to look for what exactly. I mean, we do have inkling of what we have to look for. We have our own brain, how it works, how we work, and how we perceive reality. It's things that we can use as starting points to try to understand how the brain works. But then it opens up so many different possibilities of how to get there. So I think they all have to be explored in order to have a broad understanding of it. So yeah, that's something that it's wonderful that we have so many people doing so many different things for one same global goal. But
absolutely,
that's just my take on science in general. So it's something that I find wonderful.
That's nice. We triggered another question or comment.
No. Yeah, it was a comment on your question. I think that usually in deep learning, one of the problems is the training, because you need more data, because it's the most long part. So if it's possible that a deep network just can do things without the training, that can be useful in like spontaneous learning, machine learning, I think in the future. So maybe also this can be interesting.
One of the problems that I would see with that is generalizability. Here, they did actually an experiment showing that it was the network was able to generalize to faces that it had not seen yet. But if you don't train at all and just say, okay, I select the units that are responsive to faces here, but it can be other things, you could be just selecting those the neurons that are selected, that are responsive to your specific data set. And this becomes a bit of a problem. And also, I think in general, if you train with a lot of data, you will, if you do it properly, at least, you will get better results as if you just take some that are randomly good enough for the job that you are trying to have. But it's not my area of expertise, so yeah, who knows?
I had a last question. I'm sorry. Where like the faces align with the eyes, nose, and mouth in the same place, because that actually changed a lot. The quality of the prediction.
No, yeah, I think they were. Let me check one second. I think they were most. Well, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't see exactly. They were mostly somewhat aligned. They did try to scramble the faces, like taking the eyes and the mouth and the ears and putting them at different places randomly and not at where you would expect to find them in a face. And it showed that it reduced the strength of the detection. It did not completely obliterate it, but it was much better if you had the whole face, obviously.
Because the thing that is fascinating with the visual system is you don't have to align the faces of people to know that they're faces. Fixation, like the thing that is fascinating with the human visual system, or like any mammal visual system, so you don't have to align faces perfectly together as pictures to be able to.
You don't have to, but I think usually it will be much easier for someone to detect that it is a face that you're seeing if it's on the correct orientation compared to if it's upside down. So we do have preferences, and I don't know the experiment but I expect that if you do try to measure the time response between detection of face, if it's like this, or if it's like this, or like this, or completely upside down, it will be much longer if it's not perfectly aligned. So, I mean, it's complete hypothesis. I have no data to test that, but
I guess if there was to be, they should have trained their algorithm with like a movie rather than training it with pictures.
With movies, it's
ecological.
It's much more complicated, I guess. But the beauty of it of the article is that it was quite simple. I think the neural network that they were using, showing that it can detect faces, already surprised me. But I guess you can always refine this kind of thing and go deeper.
Crazy talk. I wish I could do it. I just can't. That's why.
Once we get through the list, Michel.
All right. Forget about it.
Right. I'm sorry to cut the discussion short, but this is all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Good to have you back, Victor. Thanks for the presentation. Have an exciting week in science, and we'll see you next Monday. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.